Welcome back to the Nick Taylor Horror Show. Kourosh Ahari is an Iranian American director who just made his directorial feature debut with the horror thriller The Night from IFC Midnight. The Night focuses on a young couple and their baby girl as they check into a hotel that they suddenly cannot leave until they work out their own inner demons. The Night is currently available on demand, and I caught up with Kourosh to talk about his overall career, lessons learned from his first feature, and how he paid the bills as a filmmaker for years by starting his own production company. All this and so much more on today's episode of the Nick Taylor Horror Show. Now, without further ado, here is director of The Night, Kourosh Ahari. Kourosh, good to see you. How's it going?
Good to see you too. Good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for being here. So really enjoyed The Night a lot. It was very, very terrifying in a number of different ways. I always find there's something very creepy about this notion of being stuck someplace, particularly like with people that you love. Vivarium did a really good job of that as well, but this was extremely, extremely eerie. It felt like it came from a very authentic, personal place. So I'm curious as to what was the origin of the idea for the story.
Sure. It started with screenplay competition that my business partner, Alex Bertel, and I set to get writers from around the world to submit scripts within the guidelines that we had, which was, focusing on psychological thriller with, deeper meaning regarding human condition and limited location, limited cast. And through that process, we came upon Milad Jarmuz, a talented filmmaker from Iran, and he submitted his script, which we really liked and decided to go with. From there on, Milad and I had a lot of conversation. It was originally based in Iran, set in Iran.
Okay.
And we're going back home from their friend's party. And that series of events were happening at their own place. Now, I wanted to bring it into the US, this Iranian couple, and in a setting of hotel, which it wasn't necessarily about the location, making hotel horror film, but the hotel itself as a place that we check in and check out had significance to the story. And in addition to that, there were some personal experiences I personally had at a younger age, and Milad as well. And, we decided to sort of inject that into the, beneath story. So, you have a story on the surface of this couple that are going through this night. But then underneath, there are a lot more to pick up from the movie.
Yeah.
That was more,
Yeah. And I'm sure you're tired of any sort of a Shining comparison, but what were some of the key influences for this movie from a horror perspective?
Shining is a movie that I really enjoyed watching and I'm inspired by. And that psychological aspect of it was quite intriguing to me. That said, and we watch a lot of movies, and we take things from different movies, learn from them. But when it came down to Night, there wasn't necessarily any planning to follow certain footsteps of The Shining or Hotel California or this movie, that movie. It was solely to tell the story in a visual way that we thought is the right fit, and it happened to sort of overlay with The Shining elements and visual aspects of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like The Shining is the quintessential haunted hotel movie, but yours was completely and utterly different. But just this notion of checking into a hotel, you don't know if you'll ever check out, and the ghosts of your past start visiting you. It's such a terrifying concept, and I feel like horror in particular is such a good vehicle for explorations of things like grief and regret, because with the metaphorical vehicle of horror, it just can make those things just sing on camera. Were there any specific, I mean, horror is also a really good vehicle for social commentary as well. Were there any specific kind of symbols or metaphors that you were trying to get across in this movie from a social perspective?
Sure. Let me just start with this basic idea of this movie from the beginning, and my own perspective, was never necessarily a horror film. Like, we didn't set to make a horror film. We wanted to make a psychological thriller. And now the horror in it comes from the horror within, like the fear that we have from, either secrets that we're keeping from one another, or things that scares us within, but we try to hide.
Yeah.
So, we thought about, like, what if this idea comes to the surface and interact with these characters? So, there are definitely, things like the hotel, as I mentioned, in The Shining, the hotel was a character that was, hunted and was going after this family. In this movie, the hotel is, significant of the world that we're living in. And, it's a temporary place for us. We check in and we go and we, check out. Same as the world that we're living in. We come into it, and how we live this world is really the key. But there were definitely, fears that might connect to cultural and, being an immigrant and, foreign, that plays very subtly. Again, we didn't mean to highlight it, but, for example, the automatic fear you have of a police officer in US as a foreigner. There's the native that, has certain interaction, and then the foreigners that already feel like, how am I going to be treated without even like committing to any crime? Like, am I, already going to be, looked as the guilty or such? But there are definitely other elements. There is, the tattoo, the homeless man, the cat. The one thing that, I haven't, I've heard from few people, but not too many people seem to notice, is that once they're in this hotel and once they're start going about their night, in the beginning, we established that this hotel is in a busy street. And, you hear siren, you hear, people. As the night goes on, if you notice, there's no other life outside of this hotel. You never see a car passing, you never see anyone passing. And they're just in there to deal with their own, conflicts. But there are such things that they all are answered in the movie, I promise. And, we had people that watched it, for the second time, and the third time they came back, realized something that they didn't catch in the first time. But, we wanted to, at the end, leave it into own interpretation, because each person can perceive that idea differently, and they're all valid.
Yeah, I mean, I love the movies that are built for multiple viewings, because they're so, when you know the ending, rewatching it, it's so rewarding when there are all these like little Easter eggs along the way. And it sounds like that was very intentional on your part, right? I mean, so how did you structure it to be built for multiple viewings?
I mean, it's something that happens when you work within a team. Like, it's it comes to the production design, it comes to cinematography, it comes to ideas that were set on the paper, and then you execute it into production, from sound design, from makeup. But Jennifer Dehland, production designer, did a fantastic job helping me set those hidden elements in there. With cinematography, we visualize that, and through that, that teamwork, we were able to structure something that has all those hidden elements, yet it's not, it's hidden. It's like under the surface and not necessarily pointing at you,
Right.
in the face. So you get the chance to actually watch it again and try to find it.
That's cool. Yeah, I feel like that world building is so important for movies, and it's the difference between like an indelible movie that stays with you and a movie that can still be good, but you see it and you kind of forget about it a little while later. But it's interesting that it sounds like you turned to a lot of your production crew to help you create a deeper, bigger world with rules and laws, and it feels like it has a lot of sequel potential as well. I could see other people checking into that hotel and dealing with their demons.
Yes, I mean, we definitely thought about that. But if you take the hotel as the world that we're living in, and there are people with different stories and different demons to deal with, you can definitely look at it for opportunities there. But a simple example of it, as you were saying, I was just thinking about it. It's in real life, we have a conversation with a friend. Mm-hmm. Something is being said at the time, you get certain perspective of it, but then later on, you're driving back home, you're thinking about it, and I was like, what did he really mean with that? Like, and there's like, some other meanings behind what's being said on the surface.
Yeah. Like, are your friends really your friends? Do they, all of that paranoia, I think, it lends itself really well to horror. So what was the process like getting this movie off of the ground? I mean, you'd mentioned that it was a screenplay contest, but could you just walk us through how the movie kind of came together, like how you found the producers, how financing came together until like actual production?
Sure. Let me go back a little bit. I never thought that I would be a filmmaker. I came here to the US at the age of 18, and one of my passion was animation. Mm-hmm. So I decided to do that and follow up with that, and went to San Jose State, which is one of the notable schools for animation in the nation. And at that time, in the year that I transferred, animation program was full, and they wouldn't take new students. So I had to take another major and find a way to animation. So I picked film without knowing about it. So that summer, before I transferred, I made a short film, and that short film, happened to get recognition at the school level festival. And that magic of watching, the film with the audience, and how like the joy it gives you, and how people connect with the story that you were simply trying to say, made me fall in love with film. From there on. Exactly. From there on, all I wanted to do was just making films. And through that process, I met Alex Bertal, another talented filmmaker. And, we just had a great chemistry together. And we started a production company, Mammoth Pictures. Mm-hmm. From there on, we just wanted to make films, wanted to tell stories that matter, started with short films. And at some point, we were like, this is the time to move on to the feature world. And we could, send scripts and wait to hear from people, or, try to find someone to come produce it, or, just make the move, find a way that, to make it, as economical as possible, mm-hmm. and just tell a story. And that's how we started it. We did the screenplay competition. The script was, compelling enough to go to investors, go to, people who are interested. And then, all of a sudden it started, coming together, and that's how it all happened.
Cool. Well, I feel like there's a big lesson there. I mean, you fell in love with film, and obviously usually the journey from film school is you do what you can to get a PA job and pray for it. And then in 5 years, you just hope that you move your way up the chain. You're probably writing scripts at night. But in your case, you started a production company, and you and Alex, I believe, were working on a number of commercials and commercial projects and stuff for brands as well, which, I mean, I would imagine that time allowed you to just really hone your filmmaking skills. So, I mean, I feel like the lesson there is just entrepreneurship, where you can flex your filmmaking ability gives you a real leg up, that you don't have to go the traditional route of like, waiting tables and then getting a PA job when you can, hoping someday you'll direct. It sounds like you guys just really took things into your own hands with your production company. Is that accurate?
We tried, yes. We have we're very eager to, move forward and tell stories. And, maybe, on our end, we're rushing it, but we can't, these stories are boiling, inside
Yeah.
that, we want to, find a way to tell it as soon as possible. So, we just keep pushing until, it happens.
Yeah. So you met Alex at the Cannes Film Festival, I believe, right?
I did. Yes.
Yeah.
We both had a short film in the short film corner section of Cannes, and we met there, and we started talking to each other. Then we met back in LA again, and started getting to know each other, how close and similar our ideas are and perspective, and then from there on, we started working together.
Yeah, that's cool.
Something, and then started doing more and more.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, and this has been a common theme with a lot of directors I've talked to, having a partner, having a production partner in one way or another, or even a writing partner, but just having another person to work with on ideas and develop ideas with, just really makes a difference.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well,
at the end of it, it's a teamwork. Like it's no one person job, and it's that teamwork and the support that helps you move up.
Yeah, of course. So what are you working on next in terms of your next movie?
We have recently optioned story rights of this physicist, Ali Javan, who invented gas laser. He's a very extraordinary person. He came to US without any English and without having any undergraduate degree, and he enrolled into PhD program in Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
And from there on, he had an amazing story, and getting through this process without knowing any English, learning English, trying to make his way. And for us, this story is something that, or this figure is someone who not very much celebrated, and not many people know about it, even within Iranian community. So it was important for us to tell this story. This is what we have right now, what we're working on to develop, do research on, and then on the side we're also like writing more stories in the psychological world.
That's great. So you're kind of gonna have like a little bit of a foot still in horror and horror, suspense, sci-fi, not sci-fi.
I am fascinated with the human psychology, and I think part of that horror and fear comes from that unknown that we're afraid of. So that element itself interests me, and that happened to be horrifying to us.
Yeah. So having worked at your company Mammoth for as long as you have, you've been on a lot of sets and you've directed a lot, but this was your first feature, right? The Night was your first feature. So were there any big key learnings from doing your first feature that you're going to carry into your next feature as a director?
Yes. I mean, this whole process from the beginning to now is learning experience. But the one thing that we did, which they usually recommend first-time filmmakers, to avoid, is shooting at night,
right?
Shooting with animals and babies.
You broke all three rules. Yes. You're 3 for 3.
Yes, and it's such a short amount of time on location, which was operational, and you had to work around their time. That you had the lobby at certain times of the night, but that, I guess, challenge, it also helped with being more creative. When you really can't get what you want, you have to find a different way to tell the story. But also in the first one, you have to be involved with everything. You have to be involved with producing of it, all aspects of it, and you have to put a lot more energy towards it, which on one hand is good. On the other hand, it limits your time and energy that you would put just on directing. I think one thing that I would take away from this is that on the next one, whenever it's going to be, I do it when I can spend more time on honing the story more than trying to produce it. Got
it. Any tips for working with babies other than try to find twins?
Just ask for universe to help, because there's no other way.
Yeah, makes sense.
You can't direct the baby. It just has to happen.
So where did you guys shoot?
We shot at a hotel Normandy in Koreatown.
Oh, okay. In Koreatown in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Okay. And how long was the shoot?
The shoot was about, I would say 17 days yes, at the hotel location. And then we had another 5 days, 2 other locations. There was the home and then, road. And we got some of our stuff on set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the performances from your actors were great. And they had a lot of chemistry together. The friendship felt very real, as did the relationship, as did the trouble in the relationship, the tension. Mm-hmm. So there's your cast was very cohesive with each other. So I'm curious, what was your rehearsal process like, or your prep process like with the actors?
Mm-hmm. We one thing to mention is that Nusha Noor, the lead female actress, came into the project very late, maybe a week or 2 weeks before production. We had someone else in mind, and she was coming from Iran, but because of the Trump travel ban, we after even wrote the contract, the deal was done.
Man,
we went to get visa, and that didn't work out.
That sucks. I'm sorry to hear that.
But from there, Nusha, we got introduced to Nusha, and this was her first feature. She worked extremely hard to catch up with everything we've been getting ready for. And one thing that we did that was really helpful was during the rehearsal process, instead of trying to necessarily follow this script, we tried to create this relationship. So we started rehearsing the moments these two characters would have before they would come to America, when they were in Iran.
Wow.
the good times they had, the fights that they had. And they started to getting to know each other.
You would actually rehearse these scenes that were not in the movie at all.
Yes, we did.
That's brilliant.
And that was great way to get these two characters and make their chemistry strong. Kudu to Shahab Hosseini being a theater actor as well. In his career, knowing this process really helped with how everything went.
That's super smart. So I know we're running out of time, but as when it comes to writing and filmmaking and directing, there's a lot of books on the topic and courses, and most of which are not very worthwhile because they're not created by people who have actually done it. But That being said, throughout the course of your career, were there any books that were particularly formidable for you, either as a director or from a career perspective, or in any way that you'd recommend for filmmakers?
There was one, but you have to forgive me, I can't recollect the name of it. It was filmmaking, has a green cover.
Okay.
I can't remember the name, but maybe I'll email it to you.
Okay. If you think of that, let me know.
Yeah. But most of what I've learned, because I had such a short span of time in filmmaking process, is what I've mostly learned was being on set. And I started, as you said, even on film school projects. I started as a behind the scene photographer, then PA, and all I did, I tried to learn different aspects of filmmaking, how different directors look at the story, how they try to execute it, and whether it was a good movie or a bad movie, there was always a learning experience, because if it was a bad movie, then you would learn not to do certain things. But that was my main, and watching films were my most, important teachers.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people forget that directing is such a somatic skill. In other words, you have to actually do it to get hands-on to really learn these things. I mean, the books are super important, don't get me wrong, but actually PAing, and being on set and doing all of this stuff is super duper important.
Super important, yes. Definitely.
Cool. Well, Kourosh, it's a real pleasure, and huge congratulations on the night. Any parting advice for those aspiring filmmakers out there?
I would say if you have the spoiling story and this idea that you want to do, no matter what the obstacles are, just go ahead and do it and do the best way you can. Don't, hold back. And then the other parts will come together to help you make it.
Great. Perfect place to end. Kourosh, thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, here are some key takeaways from this conversation with Kourosh Ahari. Number 1, turn to your production crew to deepen your story. As a director, there are only so many things you can give your focus to on a daily basis on set, so you need to have a crew you can rely on. Not only rely on for technical elements, but for creative decisions as well. You want the kind of crew who can take your vision to an entirely new level by adding depth to what you've already created. In the case of The Night, there are a lot of small details throughout the film that deepen the movie's mythology and overall world-building strength. These details primarily came from Kourosh's set designers and production designers, who integrated details from his story into their work, which deepened the movie substantially by making its mythos more effective. This is exactly what you want as a director, and another reason why directors should always be open to deep collaborations as opposed to fundamentalist auteurism. Number 2, proceed through entrepreneurship. As we all know, becoming a director can be a difficult road, but to increase your chances, consider starting a production company that makes commercial projects. This can not only pay the bills really well, but can provide critical production experience on low-pressure sets that can help you hone your directorial ability. If you can't start a company like this, then consider joining one. David Fincher, Michael Cimino, Ridley Scott, and Tony Scott all got their start with commercials. You can too. It's the kind of day job that pays the wages and gives you skills that will help you as a director. Number 3, rehearse backstory. Rehearsal is a critically important element of getting the scenes right, but what not a lot of directors discuss is exercises for establishing things like camaraderie and chemistry between characters. To get his primary actors to be believable on camera as a couple who had a tumultuous past, Kourosh had the actors rehearse their characters' backstory by acting out memories, dinners, arguments, and other elements that never made it into the actual script. This is a brilliant rehearsal technique because it not only establishes chemistry and believability between characters, it establishes history. Anyway, guys, thank you as always for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, why not share it with your friends and family on social media? Don't forget to follow the show on Instagram at I'm Nick Taylor. That's I am Nick Taylor, and on Twitter at the same handle. Thanks again for listening to The Nick Taylor Horror Show.